Good morning, children. Today we are going to learn about something that is important for your future. Do you want to be doctors, teachers, or engineers when you grow up? Well, to become these things, you need to go to school and learn many things. So, have you ever heard of the Philippine Qualifications Framework? It is a system that helps us to understand what we have learned and what we need to learn to become what we want to be in the future. So the government, with the help of the President, created Executive Order number 83 to make sure that the system called the Philippine Qualifications Framework is being used by everyone who is involved in education, like teachers and schools. So this means that everyone will be on the same page about what you need to learn and how well you have learned it. So, what does this mean for you? It means that you will have a clear path to follow to reach your dreams. It also means that if you want to study in another country, they will understand what you have learned and how good you are at it. So in short, Executive Order number 83 help us to make sure that the Philippine Qualifications Framework is being used properly so that you can reach your dreams and have a bright future. Next slide, please. Do you know what it means to have a plan for what you to be when you grow up? Well, the governments wants to help you with that. They created a special law called Republic Act 10968 to make sure that everyone involved in education, like teachers and schools, has a plan to help you reach your dreams. So this special law is called an act institutionalizing the Philippine Qualifications Framework or PQF. The establishing of PQF with National Coordinating Council or NCC and appropriating funds. These are the provision. Section 2, Article 14 of the 1987 Constitution mandate the state to establish, maintain, and support a complete, adequate, and integrated system of education relevant to the needs of people and society. Next is the present Philippine education system has a unique trifocalized education management system, basic education, technical vocational education, and training and higher education. So next is the National Agenda for Inclusive Growth, creation of employment, opportunities, and poverty reduction can only be achieved through collaboration and unity of purpose of the education and the training sectors with industry. So next slide, please. Okay, for the whereas, one of the key results under Executive Order number 43 is rapid, inclusive, and sustained economic growth, one that generates job, add livelihood for, and increases the income of the poor. So the next whereas are there are gaps in the education and labor sector brought about by poor information and the continuing disconnect between educational institution. So children, the employment industry trends which has brought about the mismatch in jobs and skills. The adaptation of a qualification framework will benefit various sectors and stakeholders if education and training, particularly in encouraging lifelong learning of individuals, providing employers specific training standards and qualifications that are aligned to industry standards. So next is ensuring that training and educational institutions adhere to specific standards and are accountable for achieving the same. Next is providing the government with common standards, taxonomy, and typology of qualifications as basis for granting approvals to stakeholders. Okay, children, based on Benigno S. Aquino III, President of the Philippines, by virtue of his powers vested in him by the Constitution and existing law, do hereby order. So today, we are going to talk about the Philippine Qualifications Framework, or PQF for short. So what does this mean? The PQF is a system that help us to understand how different levels of education and training fit together. So this is important because it makes it easier for us to see how our future education and careers might look. So, what is Section 1? Section 1 of the PQF is called the Establishment of the Philippine Qualifications Framework. So this section explains why the PQF, or the Philippine Qualifications Framework, was created and what its main goals are. So, what are the objectives? The PQF was created because we needed a way to compare and understand the different levels of education and training in the Philippines. So the PQF, or Philippine Qualifications Framework, make it easier for us to see how our education fits together and what we need to do next to reach our goals. So the main goal of the PQF is to make sure that all of our education and training is of high quality. So this means that it's important for us to have a clear understanding of what we are learning and how it will help us in the future. Okay? So for the conclusion, the PQF, or the Philippine Qualification Framework, is an important system that helps us understand our education and training by making sure that our education is of high quality. So, the PQF help us reach our goals and have successful careers.
Thank you, Ms. Capili. Good day to each and everyone. My name is Arcesian Encinares and I am assigned to report the laws in Philippine Qualification Framework. The Philippine Qualification Framework has 12 sections. And Philippine Qualification Framework, it is a tool for the development of qualifications of Filipino skilled workers and professionals to ensure alignment of educational outcomes to job requirements. So the first section is establishment of Philippine Qualification Framework. It has 3 objectives. First is the adopting national standards and level of outcomes of education, which will cover the formal, informal, and non-formal education. Formal education, it is refers to the educational arrangements such as curricular qualification and teaching learning requirements that take place in education and training institutions. Informal education, it is refers to the learning that occurs in daily life assessed through the recognition, validation, and accreditation process. And the non-formal learning refers to the learning that has been acquired in addition or alternatively to formal learning, which may be structured and made more flexible. Next objectives is it is also aims to support the development of pathways and equivalences. So the pathways and equivalences, it is refers to the mechanism that enables to access to qualification. And the last objectives is to align with international qualification frameworks to support the mobility of our learners and workers. Next is Section 2, which is the PQF, the PQF National Coordinating Committee, or the PQF NCC, was established to harmonize and promote seamless education and training system. It is created by the Secretary of the Department of Education or the DepEd with the following members, which is the TESDA, Technical Educational Skill Development Authority, the Commission of the Higher Education or CHED, and DOLE, which is the Department of Labor and Employment, and last is the PRC or Professional Regulation Commission. So next section is section 3, which is the function of the PQF National Coordinating Committee. The TESDA and CHED shall ensure that the system, implementing mechanism, policies, guidelines, and other necessary procedures and documentation are completed within 6 months from the issuance of this executive order. Additionally, TESDA and CHED shall ensure regular and effective communication on updating the President on the progress and accomplishment of implementation of this executive order. Next section is section 4, which is the participation of the industry sector. To ensure that educational outcomes and job requirements are in line, representatives from the industry sector must be engaged in the development and implementation of the Philippine Qualification Framework. Next section is section 5, which is the level descriptor. The PQF has 8 levels of qualification differentiated by descriptor of expected learning outcomes along the 3 domains, which is the knowledge, skill and values, application, and degree of independence. Next section is section 6, which is the learning standard. According to the learning standard in basic education, DepEd, TESDA, and CHED will also be tasked to craft a detailed description for each of the qualification level, while the DOLE should provide the pertinent labor market information on the highly in-demand and emerging occupations as basis for prioritization. They will work together to implement national pilot programs to determine their effectiveness and applicability at all educational levels. So next section is section 7, which is the review of licensure examination. Each profession's licensing examination framework and content will be checked by the PRC and CHED to ensure that it is adhered with Philippine Qualification Framework. So next section is section 8, the Technical Secretariat. Section 8 is to ensure the efficient and effective implementation. TESDA and CHED shall organize from their present staff complements a permanent technical secretariat. The secretariat may contract the services of technical experts and authorities on relevant areas of concern such as equivalencies, accreditation, curriculum development, educational measurement, and testing. Next section is section 9, which is the funding. The amount necessary from the development of the system shall source from the budgets and development funds of TESDA and CHED. Both agencies are authorized to create specialized accounts for the purpose of implementing the system and the provision of this executive order. As additional funding source, TESDA and CHED may tap international funding agencies for donation and grants. So the next section is section 10, which is the repealing clause. All issuance, orders, rules, and regulations or parts thereof which are inconsistent with the provision of the executive order are hereby revoked and or modified accordingly. So meaning to say, for example, the orders. If an order is not consistent with the provision of the executive order or EO, it shall be revoked. So it means invalid. So the section 11 is the separability clause. If any provision of this EO is declared invalid or unconstitutional, the other provision unaffected shall remain valid and subsisting. In short, if any provision of the executive order shall be held unconstitutional or invalid, the other provision shall remain effective. So the last section is section 12, which is the effectivity clause. This act shall take effect 15 days following its complete publication in the official gazette or in 2 newspapers of general circulation in the Philippines. So that's all the 12 sections in Philippine Qualification Framework. The next discussion will be discussed by Ms. Cristobal.
Thank you, Ms. Encinares. Good day, everyone. My name is Jenica Cristobal, and I am assigned to report the topic about implementing rules and regulations. Implementing rules and regulations of Executive Order Number of 83, Series of 2012, Institutionalization of Philippine Qualifications Framework. In recognition of important role of education, training, and national development, it is hereby declared the policy of the state to institutionalize the Philippine Qualification Framework to encourage lifelong learning of individuals and to provide specific training standards and qualifications aligned. Next slide po. So, these are the following rules and regulations. Rule 1, Preliminary Provision. Rule 2, Coverage. Rule 3, Organization. Rule 4, Qualification, Standards, and Assessment. Rule 5, Final Provision. So let's talk about Rule 1, Preliminary Provision. According to Section 1, this issuance shall be referred to as the implementing rules and regulations of Executive Order Number 83, Series of 2012, or the institutionalization of the Philippine Qualification Framework. These rules and regulations shall be liberally construed as to carry out the objectives of the order which is stated in Section 1. So let's find out what are the following objectives of Philippine Qualifications Framework. The Philippine Qualifications Framework is hereby established with the following objective. First one is to adapt national standards and levels for outcomes of education. Number two, to support the development and maintenance of pathways and equivalencies which provide access to qualifications and assist people to move easily and readily between the different education training sectors and between these sectors and labor market. Number three, to align the Philippine Qualification Framework with international qualification to support the national and international mobility of workers through increased recognition of value and comparability of Philippine qualifications. So, in section 3, it is the definition of terms. It has 16. So, the first definition of terms is order refers to Executive Order Number 83, Series of 2012, or institutionalization of the Philippine Qualification Framework. Number 2 is the rules and regulation refers to the implementing rule and regulation of Executive Order Number 83, Series of 2012. Committee is refers to the Philippine Qualification Framework National Coordinating Committee. Secretariat refers to the Permanent Technical. Secretariat organized from the present staff complement of DepEd, TESDA, PRC, DOLE, and CHED. DepEd refers to the Department of Education. TESDA refers to the Technical Education and Skill Development Authority. CHED refers to the Commission on Higher Education. DOLE refers to the Department of Labor and Employment. PRC refers to the Professional Regulation Commission. PQF refers to the Philippine Qualification Framework, a national policy which describe the levels of educational qualification and set the standards for qualification outcomes. Basic education refers to the education intended to meet basic learning needs, which lays the foundation on which subsequent learning can be based. It encompasses early, childhood, elementary, and high school education, as well as alternative learning system for out-of-school youth and adult learners, and includes education for those with special needs, according to Republic Act number 9155 series of 2011. Technical vocational education and training, it refers to the education process where it involves in addition to general education, It is the study of technologies and related science and the acquisition of practical skills relating to occupation in various sectors of economic life. And social life comprises formal, organized program as a part of the school system and non-formal, organized classes outside the school system approaches. Higher education, it refers to the stage of formal education requiring secondary, post-secondary education, covering the programs and all courses of studying leading to bachelor's degree and all degree courses of the study beyond bachelor's degree level. So for qualification refers to a package of competencies describing a particular functions or job role existing in an economic sector. It is the covering of work activities required to undertake a particular job role. So for three focalized education and training refers to the three levels of Philippine education system: basic education, technical vocational education and training, and lastly, higher education. For it has key objective according to Section 4 of the Philippine Qualification Framework. First one is to establish national standards and levels for outcomes of education and training specializations, skills, and competencies. Number two, provide national regulatory and quality assurance arrangement for education and training. Number three, support the development and maintenance of pathways and equivalencies which provide access to qualifications. Number four, support individual lifelong learning goals by providing the basic for individuals to progress through education and training. Number five, align the PQF with international qualification framework to support the international mobility of learners and workers through increased recognition of the value and comparability of Philippine qualifications. So, for rule number two is the coverage. According to Section 5 applicability, this IRR shall apply to all sector levels and modes of delivery of the Philippines refocalized education system, basic education, technical vocational education and training, and lastly, higher education. It also apply in all institution and system which provide trainings, specializations, skills, and competencies, professional experience, or true lifelong learning. Participation of industry sector according to Section 6, pursuant to Section 4 of the Order Industry Sector, representative of various associations and chambers shall be consulted and engage in detailing and application of the PQF to ensure alignment. For rule number three, it is the organization. The PQF National Coordinating Committee, Section 7, by virtue of Section 2 of Executive Order Number 83 Series of 2012, the PQF or Philippine Qualification Framework National Coordinating Committee was created to be chaired by the Secretary of the Department of Education, which is DepEd, with the members comprised of the Director General of TESDA, Chairperson of CHED and PRC, and Secretary of DOLE. Powers and functions of the committee, according to Section 8, number one is to create technical working groups in support of the detailing and implementation of the PQF. Number two, harmonize the level of qualification with all levels of education. Number three, aligns education standards and learning outcomes to the level descriptors contained herein. Number four, develops and recognizes pathways and equivalences. Number five, discuss and agree on the elements of the PQF, including but not limited to their principle, key features, definition or terminology, structures, and governance arrangements. Number six, review and update the PQF. Number seven, Provide information and guidelines in the implementation of the PQF. Number 8, establish quality assurance mechanism. Number 9, maintains the National Registry of Qualified Manpower. Number 10, ensure the international alignment of the PQF with the qualification of framework of other countries. Number 11, represent the country in international or negotiation and agreement arrangement qualifications. Number 12, provides regular feedback on the progress and accomplishments to the Office of the President with respect to the implementation of the order. Number 13, perform such other functions that may be related to the implementations of the PQF. And for rule number 4, it is the qualifications, standards, and assessments. Qualification descriptors, Section 11, it is the pursuant to Section 5 of the Order, the 8th level qualification descriptors are adopted, defined in terms of knowledge and skills, applications, degree of independence, and qualification level as contained in Attachment A of this document. So the national pilot programs in Section 12 is the DepEd, TESDA, and CHED shall jointly implement national pilot programs to determine the relevance and applicability of the detailed descriptors in all levels of education. Review of licensure examination. As per Section 7 of the Order, the PRC and CHED shall review the framework and contents of the licensure examination of each of the professions and align them with that of the PQF. For rule number 5, final provision. In Section 14, it is the appropriations. According to Section 14, pursuant to Section 9 of the Order, the fund necessary for the implementation of the PQF shall be charged against the existing appropriations of DepEd, TESDA, and CHED. In Section 15, repealing clause. By virtue of Section 10 of the Order, all issuances, order, rules, and regulations, or parts thereof, which are inconsistent with the provision of the same, are hereby revoked and or modified accordingly. For Section 16, it is the separability clause. If any provision of this IRR or implementing rule and regulation is declared invalid or unconstitutional, the other provision unaffected shall remain valid and subsisting. For Section 17, it is the effectivity clause. 15 days from the date of its publication in the official gazette or in two newspaper of general circulations. Next slide po. So, to sum up the implementation of rules and regulation, broad statements toward the implementation of the provisions of the executive order signed by the chairman and all the members on December 17, 2012, submitted to the office of the president on December 21, 2012, and it is published in the Philippine Star on December 28, 2012, and in the official gazette on January 7, 2013. That's all the report of our group. Thank you for listening and God bless everyone.